I think we're all on the road in some manners, or I know I am. I know Mike is on the road. You're in
I'm
Arizona.
not. I'm not.
Dustin is not.
Still in New
He's
York.
That's
I'm in
okay.
Washington D.C. But I think it's really an observation I had this week has been really interesting as cities start to ease back in, and as diners, what it's like to ease back in. And I know Mike's given us some insights of his experiences in Colorado, but I've experienced some in DC here, and I know New York just opened outside 50% last week. And Dustin, you had a chance to dine out for the first time.
I did.
So what was that like from a reentry standpoint?
Yeah, so I've not gone anywhere fancy. You know, I have a taco place that I love that's right in my neighborhood here on the Upper West Side that I've been really sad that they've been shut down. It's Natalie and I's, one of our favorite places to go in the neighborhood. So we went back there last night and sat outside. And, I got to say, overall, the experience was really great. And it was very busy. They were on a wait list. So we put our name in and waited about 10 minutes to get sat. And outside of just, wearing the mask to actually, get to my seat, and then we take the mask off, everything else was pretty super smooth. They weren't doing anything fancy. There were no QR code menus. It was regular menus. Still handed over a credit card to make payment and whatnot. I would say the only kind of one thing that I've noticed that was maybe a little bit awkward is, as a guest, and maybe I'm just hyper aware of this, but as a guest, when I'm sitting there not wearing a mask and the server comes over to take an order, my inclination is to either not look at them or kind of want to face the other direction, or maybe even put my mask back on, just out of respect of saying, like, I don't want to be breathing in this person's direction. Sure. And I'm very aware of that. So I kind of was like, when they came over to take the orders, I was kind of awkwardly looking the other way and saying, oh, I'll have a beer, but,
Yeah.
Outside of that, the whole experience was great. Food was delicious. Felt really good. The energy was good. So, I don't really have any complaints.
Were tables spaced out properly or different?
Tables were spaced out. Their normal patio that they used to have has been significantly expanded and actually goes all the way out into this part of the street, which I don't know if people are actually getting a permit for this, if they're just saying screw it and doing it.
They applied. I know the city in New York, you had to apply for it, and suppose they were did a great job of expediting that permitting, and they were even amazed at how many they did that. So
my whole neighborhood, it seems that everyone's patio now goes all the way out into part of the street, basically where the cars would have been parked.
That's how it's going on in Boulder and Denver too. But Dustin, is it only outside dining in New York City right now?
Only outside, and I would say where we went last night, the outdoor dining was probably just as much seating, if not more seating, than is normally on the inside. So they're rocking and rolling.
Were the staff wearing gloves, masks? What did you see?
All the staff was wearing masks. Some of them were wearing gloves, but not everyone. It was pretty clear. Even the bartender inside had a mask on, and he didn't have, any guests in front of him. He was just there making drinks. And you could tell that they were taking precautions. I did see a few people kind of would handle menus, and they would take gloves off and then go change into new gloves. So what they were doing wasn't as robust as I've heard some stories at other places, but it all felt fine. And I didn't sweat it too much.
Cool.
What about you, Sab? I know you're in DC. What have you done?
Yeah, so I'm in DC and got here on Friday, and it's been really interesting because I've had 3 dining out experiences. And
first off, what phase is DC in? I don't really hear much about DC.
So DC is they can do outdoor or indoor dining at 50%. So they can do both. Different places have chosen to do different steps of that. So, and I'm not sure all the nuances of it yet. I need to read up on that. But the first night I went to Zaytinya, which is one of Jose Andres' restaurants. And so Jose and his team at Think Food Group were one of those that really put out an amazing manual on how they're handling COVID. And so for me, it was great to kind of go through, and also having read a lot about these steps of service or how they're changing in safety protocol, to actually see them in action. So I had a heightened awareness. And it was, almost like going in as like a mystery shopper, if you will, for, hotels or restaurants. And there were, steps outside. There were arrows in terms of which way was in, which door was out for guests to use. Walking up to the host stand, they had the partition. You had to have a reservation. They had tables all outside, so their patio really grew. Inside, they had taken tables out, and so it felt spaced out, but it wasn't feeling like vast and cavernous. There was a place where you could scan the QR code right at the host stand. Everybody had masks. They took us to the table, and in the middle of the dining room, they had like a communal table, and they was set up as like a sanitizing station. So if any guests wanted to wipe down their hands, they could do that. Before we sat down, I don't know if this is for our table or if they always did it, but intentionally the table was blank, nothing on it. The person wiped it down with a sanitized napkin or with a one-use sanitizer serviette, and then put it on a table, took it away, and then water came out. Everyone was wearing gloves, everyone was wearing masks, and they were very deliberate with who went to the table and who took things from the table. And as I started to talk with the teams about it, to make sure that the gloves aren't just sort of a false sense of security, like anything that anytime you touch something at the table that somebody else has touched, to the kitchen, gloves off, hands washed. And I was talking to the sommelier there, Andy Myers, the wine director for the group, and he's saying, he's changing his gloves, 30 times a night, just every time we're at the table, taking it off. We started getting a little more aware of, okay, time to clear. Let's put all of our dishes here. Let's slide them over to the side so they don't have to interfere in our space, trying to be respectful and work through some of those awkward things. So it was really great to see. And at that level of thoughtfulness and detail of how they were handling things, the menu was a little more reduced, but the experience was great and the staff was very happy to be back at work. So that was one.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what was the morale of the staff? You say you were talking to the teams. That's pretty interesting to me.
So they were there.
What was the morale?
So they'd opened 2 days ago, and so they were all trying. It was all new and trying to figure out how to work around everyone, changing out gloves and steps of service like that. I think for the most part, they're just happy to be back. They were doing 300 covers that night, so I think it had really stretched out throughout the evening, going much later. But people wanted to dine out, so there was definitely demand for that. So it was great to see that people were coming, and everyone seemed to be respectful, wearing their masks when they would go up to the restrooms and stuff. The next night went out to another restaurant, and having seen that sort of, I guess, the pinnacle of what it should be like based on all the preventative measures you could take, going to this restaurant, it was almost as they were going through the motions. And it was a little bit.
How long had it been open?
I think about the same, about a week, whenever the dining reservation regulations. So only outside patio dining, and then they also had tables in the street, and the host stand was moved outside. So instead of having single service menus, they had regular menus, which gave me pause. Whereas at Zaytinya, there were no menus, just digital menus available. And then I didn't see anybody wearing gloves. The server was wearing masks, but it made me start to think, you start seeing one thing, you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? And whether it be who's touching, the beer that comes out, the bartender, if they weren't wearing gloves and they put it on the tray for someone to pick up, and so they've touched it, and then the manager touches it, or whoever brings to the table and touches it, like all those little things where sometimes people say gloves give a false sense of security. In this case, I would have been happy to have that false sense of security rather than no sense of security. And, the check came out and the pen to sign. I'm like, okay, how many hands have touched this pen? So my mind just started racing. And everybody had masks, but it wasn't necessarily all the other steps along the way. And I didn't see a lot of, they're wiping down a table with a regular rag. Maybe they had sprayed it, maybe they didn't. But just it wasn't giving me the confidence as a diner of knowing how that was.
Isn't it amazing how much these visual cues and just watching people now be attentive to cleanliness is the hallmark of a good establishment? I mean, 100%. That's what it was not pre-COVID. Being clean is just as important. I mean, maybe not as important, but let's just say, being clean is critical. Foodborne illness, that was a thing pre-COVID. I mean, but we didn't want to see cleaning. Now we desire to see cleaning.
It gives
and the pen thing is amazing.
Yeah.
I've had a couple hotel experiences I'll talk about in a second, but looking at a pen, I'm like, where's that pen been?
Yeah. And then this morning I went to a bakery, like kind of a local coffee bakery, and it was packed, but they were doing all the right measures and, you know, spacing people out, no dining inside, and everyone was wearing gloves. But then I saw somebody with like a mask below their nose, and then I saw one other person. And so it started to unravel, and it starts like, it shows you that all the hard work and steps that everybody puts in, all it takes is one person to show sort of a chink in that armor. And then you're confident
and what a great,
in that.
And think about that in a grander scale. And we're going to talk about here in a second, bar openings and closings.
Mm-hmm.
It only takes a few bad, you know, non-compliers, or if you will, I don't even know if that's a word, but it only takes a few to screw it up for everybody. And that's the same with you know, managing a staff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out here in Arizona.
That's a hot spot in multiple ways.
I mean, they say it is, and it is hot. It's only 100 degrees right now. It feels like heaven, frankly.
But it's a warm heat. It's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. It's a dry heat. And, you know, there is something to that.
My oven's a dry heat. I don't stick my head in my oven. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You know, the interesting thing is I feel like it's cleaner and more locked down here than Colorado. And I think that Colorado is doing pretty good. This is all perception. I don't work for the government. I don't know what the actual ramifications and numbers are, but I got, you know, I flew in on Thursday, Arizona airport, Phoenix airport, completely, it felt surreal and clean at the same time. Very few people, everybody in masks everywhere, hand sanitizer stations everywhere. It just felt clean, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Got to the rental car company, which I was not happy about. Like, I was not looking forward to. The bus.
Wait, just a question. Whoever is looking forward to going to a rental car company? I don't know if that's
nobody.
Okay.
Nobody.
Just clarify that, yeah.
But I was especially not looking forward to it. They still have the busing system here, but the bus limited to 10 people. Nobody waiting because there's really just nobody coming in. Rental car place was clean. It was not a touchless contact at Budget, unfortunately, and Budget really sucks anyway. No offense to anybody that loves Budget, but it was really bad.
There goes our Budget sponsorship.
Yeah, sorry. Well, maybe they need to do a better job, and then they can get on this great show. But the car was very, very clean. It seemed clean. And we got to the hotel, and I'm at the Phoenician, and I'll just say it. They're doing an exceptional job. Everybody is with masks, and I'd say it's almost like militant. Like I have not seen one employee with anything less than a full clean looking face mask. And these blue face masks, the temporary use ones, can start to look raggedy, I've noticed, at restaurants or just kind of around. These look absolutely clean. Everything's handed to me on a tray. When you go to check in, they won't touch anything. All the pens, everything's put to you on a tray. In fact, actually, I've only had one issue with somebody with a pen, and it was please, use your own pen in my room, or they have a bunch of pens for you to take. So something as simple like that. Gloves, everybody's been wearing gloves. They'll give you masks individually wrapped in Ziploc bags if you want them. So overall, I'm just very impressed. But the reason why this is the most interesting to me is the staff appears to me to be very interested in getting it right. And it's actually kind of endearing, because they're very attentive to maybe everybody's fear. And I just feel like they're going over and above to make sure they know that that they are trying and that they're actually doing. When you're down at the pool, everything is 6 feet. There's cones. They're putting down umbrellas where you can't sit. The food service has just, again, been very responsible. So I'm impressed. I will say I was definitely of the mindset of, like, I'm going to Arizona to catch COVID. See you guys next week. I do not feel that way in any respect. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's because of the hospitality workers doing such an exceptional job. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's something you mentioned, like them telling you and showing you what they're doing. Like, there's a confidence in it. Like, the second place I went to, I walked up there and it was business as usual. And so I was thinking, they have no awareness of their responsibility or how they're going about doing this. Whereas being deliberate and helping walk people through and explaining it, just like you would on a tasting menu, here's how this course is, or here's the wine we pair like this. It shows, wow, these people have thought of everything. They are looking at all the different details.
But think about how, as a high level executive, you're trained and you train others. Tell me what you're going to do. do it, and then tell me what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I walked in. They said, here is a list of everything we're doing. And then I see it happening. And then you can go back to that list and you can just say like, boy, they did everything they told me they were going to do.
They posted it out there. They wanted to be held to
impressive.
that standard too.
And they did it.
That's great. And hotels, there's a lot at stake there. And I would say it's similar to a cruise ship, but cruise ships kind of shit the bed, I guess, in terms of, how with how they've contained it. But
the difference here is I can leave. If I want to leave, I can pack my bags and get out.
But from the business standpoint, it's like all it takes is one, whether it's the spa, whether it's a restaurant, and you have so many departments that are working to keep the machine moving forward, that if something breaks out on one, it spreads out and it gives a black eye to the entire operation and the entire business and the entire brand, specifically when you're an independent resort like you are.
Yeah. And so I've talked a lot to the staff as much as they're willing to talk to me. They're at 30% capacity. Most of the food service is shut down. They're not coming into the rooms every day. You have to ask for housekeeping services. And so what I like, and it goes back to what Chef Lachlan Patterson said with us, like a month or two ago, don't get greedy, open to what you can do exceptionally well and stay there and don't get greedy. And I feel like a hotel like this in the middle of summer with 6 pools and golf courses could have got greedy and said, we're just going to open, at least get to 50% or 75%. And they haven't. I mean, there's wings of the hotel just shut down. And so, taking that to restaurants, and I think we're going to get here in a second, when you get greedy, you make mistakes, and you get off your game. And I think it's a perfect segue. There's a bunch of interesting news coming out of bars, and, bars are opening and they shouldn't. I just think a lot of them should make the decision not to. And I'm not saying that money is not important. I absolutely know that it is, but they're opening. There's no way to run a bar without having people in close quarters, in dark lit rooms, and, in probably in a lot of areas of the country, in, damp, dank rooms where there's not air circulation. And you're just going to ruin it for everybody. There's no way to run a safe operation, even if you're doing it well.
Well, then you add drinking into the mix too, and people stop caring and they stop paying as close attention, and
and that's exactly what this one study
disaster.
Yeah, there was a great article, and we'll post it in the show notes, but it said that exact same thing, Dustin, is that when you drink, we all know your inhibitions go down, the music gets louder, you move in closer to talk. And the key way to spread this is close contact talking for a long time. You pass somebody on the street and say hi, it's not going to happen. But you're talking to somebody in a more intimate setting in a bar. If it's going to transmit, that's where it's going to be. And how do you as a bar owner, and I'm going to put it to you guys, how do you as a bar owner, how can you put your employees and your guests and then yourself as a business owner in that position? I just don't get it.
No, I think that's where you have to, whatever the restrictions are, you can't, I think people are talking about the false confidence gloves can make. I think sometimes these guidelines give a false sense of security to operators, saying if I'm obeying these occupancy ones, then I'm good to do business. Well, that's not the case, because I think you almost have to go above and beyond what is prescribed there. And I would say, if I'm looking at it saying, great, it says I can have up to 6 people in a bar, but maybe I'm going after the date night crowd. I want 2 by 2 by 2. It's gonna be Noah's Ark all throughout here, and I can't get greedy. But that also allows you to ramp up your systems and observe them to make sure your team's enforcing them, so that when it goes to the next phase where you do want to go from 2 tops to 4 tops, that everybody understands their role, what you have to do, how to hold each other accountable for those safety standards. And I think that's going to give guests the confidence. But all it takes is, one group of people to become, quote unquote, those super spreaders, and then you got to close your whole restaurant.
So I want to ask you a question that's maybe a little kind of from the opposite direction. What is the responsibility of the guest here too? Because I think as a business owner, as a hotel or a restaurant or a bar or whatever, you can do the absolute best. You could have the highest standards of operating. You could have the highest standards of cleanliness, and build all these new rules. And you could still have a lot of guests that are coming to you that just don't pay attention to anything. That simply just take their masks off, don't give a shit, drink, interact with people, scream in the lobby because they don't want to wear a mask. You have no idea what you're going to be dealing with on that end. What do you think is the responsibility of the guests here, and what do you think the establishments, whether it's restaurants or hotels or what have you, should be holding those guests to? Like, where do we draw the line here between hospitality and responsible guest behavior?
I've got two thoughts, but I definitely want to hear Salvatore's thought because he just gave a great look. But my thinking is this, and I say this all the time. I don't care if you like wearing a mask or not. If I show up at your house and you ask me to take my shoes off, I am a guest in your home and I take my shoes off. If I don't want to, I leave. If I come into your restaurant, it says masks are required. Now, here in Arizona, masks are by state mandate are required. But if I show up and I say I'm not wearing a mask, you got to ask me to leave. And if I if I throw a fit, that's on me. But I'm not respecting your house, and I think that's that's just rude, fundamentally rude. Forget COVID. I mean, it's also importantly rude, but I think it's crap. So I think that the guest has a huge responsibility to adhere to the rules and then to make safe decisions. But I put it on the restaurateur as well, or the hotel, to say you need to leave. And I think that's the uncomfortable part. As as somebody in the hospitality industry, you always want to make the customer feel safe and feel welcome, and the customer's always right, and all of these things. And when somebody says, "Well, I don't want to wear a mask," you say, "Well, you have to. Now you have to leave." I mean, kicking somebody out of your restaurant, that's got to be tough work. But I think you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sab?
I think you have a responsibility to your team to keep them safe, and I think also to keep other guests safe. And that's what it comes down to. Serving alcohol, it's not a right, it's a privilege. And when you look at serving and being open during these times, it's the same thing. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And so with that comes responsibility. And so as a business owner, you can't say, "Oh, well, I had the rules, but they didn't follow them." Well, what happens if somebody comes in and you serve somebody underage alcohol, or serve somebody?
That's the perfect example.
It's like I give Dustin a beer and then he gives it to somebody that's underage. So I didn't know that happened. That's not a viable excuse. And
nope.
While this isn't necessarily going to court, I do think you have to take the same level of
responsibility
and ownership of
mm-hmm.
it. So
here's why it could go to court, and here's what the states are doing. The states are actually pulling and ticketing liquor, or pulling liquor licenses or suspending liquor licenses if you exceed capacity, if you break rules. So I say, as a business owner, if I come into your place and I'm taking shots, or I'm acting out of course, and forget COVID, all the any bartender is going to say, "Get out of here!
Yeah, you
get this guy out of here." You cut him off. You get him out of here. Why are you okay to do that when your liquor license is on the line, but not when health is on the line? So I think you need to take the exact same approach and say, "You're not adhering to the rules, and I know it sucks, buddy, and we want this to be over, but I need to get you need to put the mask on, and you need to get out of here, because I don't want to lose my business license, and I don't want to lose customers."
Mm-hmm.
And I think
you want to protect your team, you want to protect your guests. I fully agree with you guys. I'm just in the business, and I fully agree with both of you guys on the answer. I'm curious as to how many restaurateurs or the hotel management teams and whatnot are kind of talking about this piece. I think there's been a lot of emphasis placed on, what are we going to do on our end to make sure everything's clean, that we're wearing gloves, or we're showing we're washing our hands, we're, using hand sanitizer, we're wiping down the tables, we're wearing our masks, we're doing all these things. We've got QR codes, we've got all this stuff. I'm curious how much emphasis is being placed on, like, we need to make sure that our guests are adhering to this as well. And where is that line? When are we going to push them to make sure that, they're playing by the rules too?
Well, I think there was an interesting, I saw it on Twitter, and it had been shared like 100,000 times. A bar owner in Houston, I believe it was from the Cottonmouth Club in Houston, and it was about a 10-minute speech, and he called it, a PSA from the future, being that they were one of the first states to open, and I think there's 4 of the 7 largest states in the United States are in Texas, and Houston was one, and they've seen it ravish bars, whether it be employees or use that as a place where a lot of people are contracting it. And he says, he can enforce it, but then somebody walking out and going to the bar next door and them not enforcing it, it's not helping the issue at all, and it's actually working against it. And so that's where it's just like with alcohol, it's like treating it like that. Everybody has to play by these rules, otherwise we're all it's not going to stop just because that bar doesn't and then ours does. all boats rise and sink with the tide here.
Yeah. And look, I certainly sympathize with bar owners more than restaurants. I think that they are on the absolute long haul to recovery, because it's gonna be a while before it's really safe to go back to a bar, and we're seeing it right now, and that's just terrible. And I hopefully if this IRC, this stabilization fund for restaurants comes through, hopefully it will help bar owners, because I think as a service to the public, bar owners need to keep their bars closed longer than any restaurant would, unless you can do it all outside. And there's only a few areas where that's really going to work. So
100%.
It's disappointing, but better to be safe than potentially lose your business forever because you lost your liquor license. And
it was interesting when you mentioned bars being closed, and when I was at Zytenia looking at it, the bar was not sad at all. And so when you look at a restaurant that's that big, that's that bustling, and that relies on people to be dining at the bar, too deep at the bar, they didn't have any of their communal tables open. It's a huge shift. Like, obviously it's too early to tell the impact on the business model when you start stripping those out, but that's what's going to be, 1 week in, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in. As you start to see that, it'll be interesting to see what the economics of this new restaurant actually looks like in this time. And that's why I think you do need the restaurant fund that they're talking about, because even at 50% capacity, even at 75% capacity, we're not being able to have bars open. Then that really is a huge obstacle for restaurants when you just look at the physical formula it takes, or the financial formula it takes to be a profitable restaurant.
Yeah, and it's actually a perfect segue into the next topic, which is how is the resurgence of on-premise affecting off-premise sales? And some recent data shows that it is taking a chunk out of the rise of the on-premise is starting to take a chunk out of the off-premise, but not by much, because it's still, people are still buying at home or buying to drink at home. But Dustin, I'm super interested to hear what you're seeing as far as trends and what people are, what categories people are drinking. Are the craft cocktails still big? I noticed that from the most recent Nielsen ratings that spirits are still beating every other segment, with wine trailing, and then FMB, which is fermented malt beverages, beer, White Claws, those kind of things are the lowest. What are you seeing, Dustin?
Yeah, it's, this has been really the first week for us to start to see anything. The trends for us is a little bit different on my company level, because we don't do a ton with spirits to begin with. We have some, but it's not a huge segment of our business to begin with. We're mostly wine. But being the first week that restaurants were reopening for the outdoors, we definitely saw a decrease in sales. This week is not significantly slower, but it's noticeably slower than it has been leading up to this. So we're starting to see a little bit of a decline. It's hard for me to tell yet, though, whether it's because we're coming up on a holiday, we're in the summer season, which is typically slow for us anyway. It's really difficult to tell if it's due to the restaurants opening, summer, or some combination thereof. So yet to be seen. So I think we'll, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to have a better idea as to how this has been impacting us on the on-premise side.
Well, I think that's important, Dustin. You were talking about how, just like even going into this, like, even if you spiked, is this a sustainable one, or is this just like a blip? What's going to happen after this? And I think same now as you're looking at it, it's important for any business on either side, whether you're spiking or whether you're decreasing in terms of your sales. Is this something you really have to have a pulse on it to understand? Is this here to stay, or how do I get ahead of this? What's out there? So I think, as you mentioned, it's new. Don't be too quick to judge it, but don't be too quick to write it off either.
Right. Yeah. I think, I kind of thought from the beginning, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go into the expectation that this surge in sales is going to last forever. So, we've been trying to take more advantage of acquiring new customers over this course of time, in the hopes that when things do inevitably start declining again, that we've got, a new base of people that we've come across in the meantime. And when I say we're declining, it's still, compared to this time last year, still significantly better. Summer is notoriously slow for us, particularly here in New York. Everybody leaves town. So with everybody kind of staying home and ordering in, and restaurants weren't open, etc., we saw a benefit from that, certainly. With things reopening now, it's slowed down a little bit, but it's still still better than last year. So it's really hard to tell. Like I said, I think we'll see more of this in the coming weeks. But we're taking the stance of, all right, we did our jobs over these last couple of months. We're going to continue pushing in the same way that we have been. And we'll try to ride this thing for as long as we can and adjust whenever we need to.
Here's a couple fun numbers based on what you were just saying, Dustin. E-commerce in April, e-commerce for alcohol beverage sales was 6 times higher than last year. And now in June, it's 3 times higher. So still significantly higher, but reduced by half. That's great.
Yes, that feels about right.
Yeah, so you're seeing that. Goes along with what you guys are seeing because you're e-commerce, right? Yeah. All right. So a couple other things. This is interesting here. Nielsen data for the first week of June, and for people surveyed in Texas, Florida, New York, and California, of those who drank alcohol in the last 3 months. This is pretty interesting. Looking ahead to late June, more were planning to visit on-premise. 35% plan to go out to bars and restaurants primarily for an occasion, and 19% plan on going out for a drinking occasion. The higher numbers were higher in Texas and Florida, lower in New York, California. 60% of consumers claim to have ordered takeout delivery of food in the last 2 weeks, and 14% of that included delivery with alcohol. So that's interesting. But yeah, overall numbers still much higher than last year, but clearly going down as the on-premise comes back up.
And just to unpack some of those numbers, I'm just trying to think through it and saying, if I'm buying alcohol, specifically hard liquor, that's not something that I'm going out on a daily basis to buy. It's probably a purchase that you make early on, and then you're still depleting that over the time, over an extended period of time. So while you may have seen spikes before, you may not see that spike in sales continue. But on the other side of that, with restaurants not being able to have bars to gather in, do you see people kind of tailgating before they go out to a restaurant more? Or things like that. And it'll also be interesting when you start looking at those P&Ls in restaurants, when you look at their beverage mix, how that shifts now. Because if you are losing that bar business, and if liquor is one of the best cogs that you're running from a financial standpoint, what does that impact as it flows through your P&L? So another thing that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds or how it plays out, but only time will tell as you start to tune in your operation.
Yep. Top performers still tequila and whiskey. Just double-digit growth, just to keep on cranking. And Sabato's favorite, White Claw, is just killing it. Just literally killing it at all turns.
I mean, I thought, I was an early adapter, like so early, like Zima was my thing back in the day.
I still love Zima.
Yeah, and I don't know how Zima missed out on, they were just ahead of their time. Like Mad Dog 2020, really it was ahead of its time.
Unbelievable. Okay, interesting segue here too is with the amount of delivery still soaring in both on-premise delivery for off-premise consumption, that kind of niche we have right now, and the massive amount of delivery from off-premise, there's a lot of violations, and in California is been really cracking down. And when I'd say like a month or two ago when this all first started, I got asked by a lot of people, do you think that the liquor enforcement agencies are going to be enforcing? And I was thinking, boy, these people are at home. Realistically, there's just no way for them to enforce. But I was wrong. They are enforcing. They're setting stings, underage stings, and they're getting a lot of delivery drivers for not checking IDs and delivering, and maybe just dropping it on the front porch and leaving, and not getting IDs. And what that's leading to are sting failures, and then also just young, under 21s getting alcohol. So who's in trouble there?
Who's it? Yeah,
look at you. I love you.
Let me just at least tee it up for you.
Exactly where I was going. So you know who's at fault? The license holder, the restaurant. The delivery driver has nothing to do with it. The restaurant will be screwed. Excuse my language. The restaurant will be really be in trouble. And then if it's a wine shop or a spirit shop, the license holder is the one where the axe comes down, as the California ABC likes to say.
Wow.
So so you need to, if you're not hooked up with the proper delivery service, that's going to be on you. It is absolutely going to be on you. And maybe there's some, you can point the finger and claim some breach of contract, but it doesn't matter once your license has been dinged. Some of these instances, if you've been dinged once or twice, I mean, you could lose your license. So So it is not a time to be slacking. Going back to the whole keeping yourself clean, you got to keep your nose clean in business as well, and make sure that license is so well protected.
What's in those? Is there anything in those delivery contracts that sort of gives them a?
I mean, there would be, like, if I'm writing a contract for a delivery service, I'm definitely going to say, delivery company agrees and represents that it will conduct itself in a lawful manner. Will, checking IDs as part of the contract. But, what's the damage there? If I'm writing the contract for the delivery service, I'm saying, look, if we breach a contract, you get the price of delivery back. You don't get, you don't get anything else. It's like back in the old days when you went to develop a roll of film, I'm really going to date us here 3, but we all know that when you went and took that roll
That's
of
a
film,
roll of film, Mike.
our young millennial here, Dustin, trying to stay cool. The liability was generally limited to the price of the roll of film. So, you went in with your wedding photos and they developed film wrong and it was all blank. You got your $595 back. You don't get the price. You don't get the cost of, the wedding, whatever it might have been. So it's the same thing here is that you would say to the delivery driver, say, fine, you get the $595 back, but your license, sorry, that happened. Fire us, but you're like, that's on you. And the state doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. The state says you are the license holder. You agree to check IDs and to serve alcohol under certain guidelines, and you didn't do it. And therefore your license is, we just don't even care what your excuse is.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to say, anybody doing, every restaurant doing takeout, delivery alcohol needs to be, I would take this opportunity on Monday or even tonight just to go back through and say, make sure all our policies are in place, because I think the stings are out there. Plus the stings generate revenue for the state, and the state needs massive amounts of revenue. Every state.
I was thinking about the dining out and how New York's at 50% capacity. I think a lot of states are, and you can dine outside. I feel much safer dining outside rather than in the closed quarters of the bars.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen, it'd be interesting to see what happens when inclement weather comes, because having worked in Florida, having worked in Colorado, and you see those storms come through, and we always said you could bring, at least you see people gathered around inside with their drinks or their food while they're waiting for the storm to pass. You have no option for that.
No.
So that's like talk about like a fire drill that happens like in the middle of service. And if you haven't gone through how to stop, drop, and roll and reset and all that, then that's just waiting. It's a
you almost can't let them in. Boulder, we have that if it's over 85, 90 degrees, especially, guys, you're getting that storm. I mean, Dustin, you've worked in Boulder. That storm's rolling through in the summer, and you're going to seat that many people on white white tablecloths, and you're going to have this massive wind whip through and break everything. And they're not even allowed to run inside. You cannot house them. Yeah. I mean, how do you
and the storm always happens. If you look at the radar, it always happens right before you're ready to open your doors, or right at like 7:30 at night when your whole patio is set. Like
it never happens at a good time.
No,
never happens. But then at like 8:30 p.m., it's the most beautiful sunset of all time. You're like, man, we should have been out here the whole time.
That's the way it goes.
Anyway, all right, gents, closing things down here. Where are you going to eat next, Sabato? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm going to dinner at a restaurant called 7 Reasons here in DC, which I'm really excited for. And it was, I think, one of Bon Appetit's best new restaurants last year. And dining out, they had an option to dine on the patio. You could dine inside or at their tasting counter. And they were very clear with the steps they were taking, and that if you dined outside and it rained, they had to cancel it, then you could then have your reservation for next month on the same date of the next month, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Wouldn't have worked for my situation. So as nice as it is tonight, I took the option of the security of being able to know I had a reservation, rain or shine.
Dusty, what about you?
No plans as of yet. We'll see. I'm supposed to go meet somebody for a glass of wine tomorrow. But we're actually just going to a friend's restaurant. They're going to let us sit on the patio and just use a table, pop a bottle. So it's going to be really nice and easy. But we'll see. I'm still a little reserved. I'm comfortable in my neighborhood. I'm comfortable going close by where I can walk. I frankly am a little, don't really want to be going out to places that I'm not super familiar with at the moment. So, just my comfort level at the moment.
One other thing that I didn't mention earlier, that as you were talking through that, Dustin, that triggered my mind, is that I was also so much more conscious of being on time and also getting out much quicker. And just knowing that at 50% capacity, you need that table, and wanting to be respectful of that from the restaurateur standpoint. So it was heightened awareness of trying, not wanting to linger, and not wanting to be tardy for them. So
I think that. Go ahead, Dustin.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of, it just makes me think about, this whole scenario that we're dealing with restaurants and dining out right now. It really is kind of it's got to be more of a two-way street, and there's got to be some kind of a team mentality here, both from the guest as well as the restaurant, right? Like, the restaurant's got to do the best that it can with what it's got, providing a safe and comfortable and clean, sanitized environment for the guest. And then guests, I would hope that we can educate them enough to recognize that, like, restaurants are in a tough spot right now, and let's do the best that you can to follow the rules, be on time, get in, get out, or if you're going to hang out, keep spending money, and do what you can. Otherwise, these restaurants just may not even be around in a few months. So I guess, keeping everybody on the same page with that, I think, is a good mentality to be in.
Yeah, we're gonna just keep doing takeout. That's what we've been doing. No dine-in here in Arizona, but Luminati's is the pizza shop. Lou Malnati's is the name of the pizza shop, and we're gonna give that a try this evening. I'm looking forward to it. It looks good, but again, that'll be takeout, and so we'll see. But I'm with you guys. I think it's definitely I gotta have trust. If the restaurant doesn't look like it's clean, I don't want anything to do with it. And then I feel I'm a kind of guy that if you are on time, you're late. So reservations and being on time works for me very well. And I also am attentive to let's get out when they need us to leave kind of deal. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's a classic consumer, and I mean, maybe a type of consumer that says, look, I'm coming out to a restaurant. You need to take care of me. Like, why else am I coming out? Like, I can eat anywhere. And I think that, maybe accommodating in a polite way and almost kind of retraining that individual to say, well, look, we're all in this together. You need to make an effort. And if you want us to be here down the road, that's going to be a big part of it too. But yeah, we're still in a wait and see mode on those things, I think.
Yeah, just little things too. Like I saw somebody posted about this the other day, but as restaurants reopen, particularly here in New York, places that are normally a BYO place, or that allow corkage, maybe hold off on bringing your own bottles into a restaurant for a little bit and buy off the wine list, just taking into consideration, that the restaurant is in a tough spot, I think.
When I saw that, I thought to myself, I'm not letting a bottle of restaurant in my wine because I don't know where it's been. So maybe I'm not going to allow corkage right now because I don't know whose hands have been all over that. Now you're going to ask me to open it? I can, and so maybe this is a good opportunity to say, just like, look, no outside food or beverage for right now. But I agree with you. I think it's, hey, look, we're not trying to come in and coupon cut and, kind of nickel and dime here. If you're eating out right now, it's because you want to support a restaurant or you want to get out for you. And so enjoy the experience. Don't bring your own wine at this point unless you absolutely need to. Just enjoy it. That's what I say.
Love it. Well, be safe, dine well, and look forward to raising glass through you at some point soon.
Hopefully in beautiful Arizona, gents. Get the dome wax out. Little banana boat.
Wear sunscreen.
Banana hammock, of course. But thanks everybody for joining, and I hope everyone's enjoying the podcast format. And we're just going to continue to grow that library. But everybody stay safe and give us a couple likes, of course. Let your friends know and pass it around Apple's iTunes and Spotify. And the video will still be up on YouTube. But check in next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Cheers.